Over the weekend of the 3rd and 4th of August in 2024, the 52nd annual Model Railway Exhibition was held at the Melbourne Showgrounds, presented by the Australian Model Railway Association's Victorian branch. With over 50 layouts, traders and manufacturers in attendance, we're going to take a look at some of the layouts that were at this exhibition. Exhibition reports on this channel are made possible by the patrons on Patreon. And if you are interested in gaining early access to videos while supporting their production, head over to my Patreon, linked in the description below. And of course, if you are new here, don't forget to be subscribed so you don't miss out on any of the upcoming videos that I have coming out regularly. So we're going to start by taking a look at one of my favourite layouts of this exhibition, Kinmont and Winch number 3, which is an Owen 30 layout by Dan Pickard and David Price. This cameo-style layout provides 2 different bush settings for various types of narrow gauge operations. Featuring a mix of Victorian Railways narrow gauge prototypical trains, plus a variety of logging tramway equipment, rolling through a lush bush landscape. Fremo 9 Australia. Fremo 9 is a standard based on one created by English modelers, and it has successfully worked with a group all turning up and building a railway and running it in just a few hours. The standard is defined by an end connector plate and scenic colour for the transition between modules, as well as track height and a control system. Penzance and Malmsbury. Penzance is a model of a seaside terminus on the old Great Western Railway, in the extreme southwestern corner of England's railway network. It's set in 1913, just before the loco depot was moved a couple of miles up the line and the storm-battered wooden viaduct along the beach was replaced by a double-track causeway. Malmsbury is a model of the stone viaduct and minor station on the line between Melbourne and Bendigo, set around the end of steam in the 1960s. These two are T-gauge, which is 1 to 480th scale. These layouts use linear motor drive systems instead of conventional propulsion. This avoids many of the usual reliability problems of working in this tiny scale, and it makes automation and long trains very simple. The layouts are both 6 foot by 2 foot, and all structures and trains are 3D printed in ABS plastic using a basic filament printer. You can find out more about these layouts in some links that I've left in the description below. From the Sunbury Model Railway Club, the Beechu. The Victorian Railway's 2-foot 6-inch branch line from Colac to Beech Forest and Crows, otherwise known as the Beechu, was an integral lifeline for settlers, farmers and logging outfits in the first half of the 20th century in the Otway Ranges, opening in 1902 to Beech Forest, then to Crows in 1911. There were 5 of these 2-foot 6-inch lines in Victoria, all under the management of the then State Government Railway Division. with the Beechu line being the largest and most extensive of all of them. Key transport on the line consisted of potatoes, sawn timber, livestock and other agricultural products, and there was limited passenger traffic. Sadly, the line saw closure in 1962 due to a downturn in traffic and a move away from hard-to-manage branch lines by the Victorian Railways. Motive power consisted of NA Class 262 tank engines, with 2 Bayer Peacock Garretts also being used. The module design employed for the Beechu layout consists of individual pairs of modules that share common end panels, allowing for the layout to be displayed in many different formats and configurations. The AMRA Outdoor Group. This layout is in G gauge and is designed primarily for use in the garden. It represents an American railway museum, and the rolling stock comes from a number of different periods from the 1890s through to the 1960s. The locomotives include the usual camelback steam locomotives through to more modern era diesels. And if you do have an interest in garden scale trains, you can have a look at the AMRA Club's website, as they do have a large garden railway at the club rooms in Glen Iris. The setting is Baja, Mexico, in the early 1950s, and it's based around tequila processing. There are 3 levels to this mini layout, with rugged cliff formations, cacti, palm trees, and the wonderful water scene. The top Owen 18 train line runs from the agave fields, transporting agave peanuts to a hoist. The hoist lowers the peanuts down to the tequila distillery, located on the middle level, to process them into tequila. From here, the barrels are transported by the Owen 30 train along the wind-swept cliffs of Baja, Mexico, traversing 3 bridges on the way to a crane. The crane then lowers the barrels down to a busy port area at the bottom level for transport by boat or to the local cantina. There's a tourist train on the bottom level running around in a figure 8. All the structures are scratch built and a bit run down. There are over 60 figures that occupy this layout, and lots of them have fun little scenes. So the 3 little trains, the hoist and the crane are all on an automated circuit. So plenty of action happening on this 60cm by 1.4 metre layout. Ffarqhar Station sits at the terminus of the Ffarqhar branch line, one of the many lines on the North Western Railway on the island of Sodor. Passenger services are run using push-pull consists headed by a famous blue engine, whilst his green sidekick hauls the freight. As you might have guessed by now, this is Thomas's branch line, and is modelled after the Reverend Audrey's exhibition layout. There are no faces here though, so you can see a realistically represented cast of the Ffarqhar branch and tramway, and other characters from the Railway series books. The pitch for this layout is old school charm. These engines are old and noisy, and points and signals are powered by coat hangers and run on DC with block controls, and it's built for a nostalgia of every kind. New South Wales layout Dungog. This layout is based on the New South Wales North Coast area, set in the era of the 1980s to the early 1990s. This layout was previously designed, built and constructed by the North Shore Modellers Association, but was sold to a private individual in 2022 and has now undergone extensive renovation with full CTC signalling and JMR control features, which was undertaken and completed in less than 3 months. Billabong Flat represents a terminus of a branch line in an extremely remote country Victoria during the early 1970s. This layout follows Victorian Railways practice and depicts the end of this branch line with a small station, goods shed and engine shed. Presented by the European Model Railway Association with support of the Wingate family. Modelled in HO, l'Aqueduc de Ffarqhar represents a fictitious local line in Provence, with many features famous to the French Mediterranean coastline, from limestone caves to Roman infrastructure and traditional architecture. The layout also contains many cameos and scenes that allude to classic French cinema. The layout is a classic loop, with a traverser using a timber frame construction with styrofoam and plaster for the scene base. And all town buildings, castles, trees and tunnels are scratch built to represent those in southern France. Trains running on the layout come from a wide variety of European manufacturers, included to but not limited to Juve, REE models, Fleischmann, Rocco and Tait. The Darling Harbour goods line from Sydney began in 1855 with the opening of the Sydney to Parramatta Railway as a branch line from Sydney Central Station. By 1963, the yard had grown to be 56 acres in size, the largest in Australia, with 30 miles or 48 kilometres of track and handled more than 18,000 trains per year. The Darling Harbour layout is a representation of the western side of the complex from Ultimo Road to Darling Island, to the Darling Island Wharves at Pyrmont Bay. At the peak of operation, around 1970, through to the closure of the yard in 1984. The layout includes iconic structures of that period, some of which still exist, as the Ultimo Power Station, now Powerhouse Museum, the Australian Mercantile Building, which was burnt down in 1992, the Goldsborough Mort Building, and a double-decker goods shed, which is now a hotel site. And the Pymont's Power Station is now Star Casino.
You will.
Cheakamus Canyon is located near milepost 56 of the British Columbia Railway, the Squamish division near Garibaldi, in the province of British Columbia, Canada. The 4 bridges are replications of the actual ones on the site and are kit-bashed with scratch-built components. The scenery has been built using latex mould for plaster on a foam base. Trees are by Model Scene, and they used a lot of AK and Vallejo products for the scenery. Trains featured on the layout cover a period from the 1970s to 2004. The layout was featured in the December 2021 issue of Continental Modeler. And there's lots of little things you can see there, like bears and mountain goats, eagles, and even some wolves. The Australian Japanese Model Railway Group presents the Railways of Japan, featuring highly detailed dioramas and an inventory of Japanese trains from high-speed bullet trains to intercity, express, interurban, goods steam, diesel, electric, private railways, tourist railways, and of course, trams. Borderline is based on a fictional township on the South Australian and Victorian borders. It's modelled in the 1980s era of South Australian Railways and the renaming to Australian National Days. This particular layout sees a colourful array of rolling stock utilised during this transition period. Two Mile Creek is an Owen 30 narrow gauge layout that depicts timber harvesting and sawmilling township around South Gippsland in the 1920s, with scenes of timber felling, winching logs, sawmilling operations, and the township associated with buildings of that era. They've incorporated to create a steep, hilly, thick bushland area. Prior to early pioneers clearing the land for farming and coal mining. The layout scenery incorporates a long tunnel, trestle bridges, rocky outcrops, mountain ash trees and fern trees with creeks and lakes. Cinnamon Port is a freelance narrow gauge railway inspired by the images of colonial Ceylon, which is now present-day Sri Lanka. From the early 1900s up to independence from British rule in 1948, the point-to-point layout traverses a waterfront scene that reflects historic photographs of Colombo and the canal region known as Negombo Kowloon. The buildings in this region managed to combine indigenous structures with the Portuguese, Dutch and British architectural styles during their respective colonial periods. The climate and geography of this beautiful island provides a lush tropical backdrop to this scene. Daraby is an O-scale layout from the United Kingdom, specifically the Western region. This is an end-to-end shunting layout, measuring 7.2 metres long, running both steam and diesel. This rendition of Carlingford in model form is a point-to-point HO scale layout, ever growing in its length and bits are slowly being added to over time. The construction of this layout came about during the lockdowns in 2020 and has been an ongoing project over the past few years. The Carlingford line was a small branch line in Sydney, which closed to make way for light rail. The original line was open for about 130 years. The scenery implemented within the layout is reminiscent of the late 80s to the early 90s, and coincides with the time period in which the layout intends to replicate. The rolling stock also reflects the era, with many of the classic Sydney single-deck trains running up and down the line. There were also a large amount of traders and manufacturers at this exhibition, and they were Escision Models, Barry's Boxes, Bellarine Railway, the British Railway Modellers of Australia, Brunel Hobbies, Buildings in O-Scale, Kazula Hobbies, Euro Model Trains, Get the Met, Gopher, Ixion and Buck and Bull Model Trains, Hydra Solutions, IDR Models, Junction Models, Metro Hobbies, On-Track Models, Orient Express Model Railways, Pulse 3D, Railway Coins, SDS Models, Sonic Miniature Tools, Steam Era Models, Steam-Powered Garden Railways, the Model Emporium Hobby Store, the Train Girl, Trackside Models, Train Builder, Train World, the Victorian Model Railway Society, and I had a stand there next to the Fremo 9 modular layout. Well, Will James Railways. And to add to all of this, Steamrail Victoria, on the Sunday, ran their vintage Tait train to and from Flinders Street Station direct to the exhibition at the Showgrounds. Now in 2025, this exhibition will be back on again. And if you are keen to find out more about this exhibition, you can follow AMRA Victoria on social media, check out their website, or even better, keep up to date with everything model railways in Australia with my monthly model railway news on this channel. So there we are. I hope you've all enjoyed this presentation of the 52nd Model Train Show, held at the Melbourne Showgrounds and presented by AMRA Victoria. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Hooroo!